Item number 13 on your agenda is 23-0151. It's a rezoning application by DeLorean Power LLC to amend the proffered conditions of rezoning number 1315 to permit the proposed use, power plant, battery energy storage system, as well as other uses permitted in both heavy manufacturing, M3, and Langley Business Park, LBP, districts at 3201 Commander Shepherd Boulevard, LRSN 6001003, which is approximately 32.83 acres and currently zoned M3 district with conditions.
Mr. Mayor and council members, Chief Planner Donald Whipple will be making this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is item 23-0151 by DeLorean Power to amend the proffered conditions of a previous rezoning number 1315, specifically for a battery energy storage system, which is defined as a power plant use in our zoning ordinance. The property is located off of Commander Shepherd Boulevard, as indicated by the red star across from NASA Langley. And this is a close-up of the just under 33-acre site that's outlined in blue. And then just a closer aerial that shows the condition of the site today. It's also adjacent to Langley Speedway. The current site, zoning of the site is M3 conditional. This is the proposed concept plan by the applicant, who will go into this further detail in their presentation, but this is the overall area of the actual battery storage systems, which are indicated by all of these various rectangle shapes and sizes. There are 2 BMPs located on the site, and there is a proposed landscape buffer along this edge, which it's not directly fronting Commander Shepherd out here, but this can be visible from Commander Shepherd. And this is more specific. This image on the left is a specific diagram of what the buffer would look like, and this has been proffered by the applicant. But on the right-hand side, just this points out, as highlighted in the yellow outline, the location of this 20-foot landscape buffer. These are example renderings. The top one shows you what an individual storage system cabinet would look like. And then the bottom picture, that is a representation of a number of these is indicated in the site plan when you put a number of these boxes together and you get an overall battery storage system. The future land use for this site is business industrial, as indicated by the blue. And I have several slides that speak to the public policy. The first one's from a land use perspective. These policies are addressing the infrastructure needs to support development and also better utilization and redevelopment of vacant and underutilized properties. This slide refers to economic development policies, and again, relating to strengthening the ability of older industrial areas to support new and expanded businesses, as well as providing utility infrastructure for the greater good of a region, or not of the region, but of the area of the city or the city as a whole. And this slide of public policies is specializing in the environmental and resilience policies that the city has, and they speak to the protection of natural systems, whether it be trees, woodlands, or wetlands, when we're looking at developing land, protecting those things. So our analysis by staff is our belief that this proposal is consistent with these plan policies that were just introduced. It meets the goals of energy assurance, as well as meeting a regional need for alternate power. And as I mentioned, the natural systems are being protected, and fire staff has vetted this proposal, and they're confident in their abilities to mitigate a potential emergency. So there are a few proper conditions. The first one speaks to the limitation of the permitted use. The previous rezoning limited to a particular gas type generation type thing that was utilized by NASA Langley that is no longer utilized, and so it was very specific, as this limitation will be very specific to battery storage systems, as well as any other use that would be permitted in both the Langley Business Park zoning district and M3. It also being proffered as a concept plan, the limits of disturbance, which would protect the natural systems that we talked about, as well as the landscape buffer. And then there's also a condition regarding the provision of stormwater and necessary drainage easements on the site. With that, after the applicant has had an opportunity to make their presentation and council holds a public hearing, staff and planning commission respectfully recommend approval of item 23-0151 with 8 proper conditions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have of me at this time. And as mentioned, the applicant is here to make a presentation.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Whipple? Councilman Hobbs?
Mr. Whipple, what's the use of these batteries, and are they just going to be stored there or manufactured?
No, so they would come in, the applicant will probably get into greater detail on this, but they would put those there. What they do is they store energy off the grid and they retain it, and then as needed, the energy goes back out onto the grid.
All right, and who
like
will
during
be,
a power outage or something like that.
Who will be responsible for inspecting this site on a regular basis?
It would be an employee of DeLorean Power or a contractor that they contract with to do that. They can address that question as well.
All right, and NASA Langley is fine with it being operated over there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Mugler?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Whipple, can you orient me on this, the landscape buffer? It's on the right here. I'm just trying to determine if that is.
Yeah, so let me go back to this slide here. So this is Commander Shepard right here. And so NASA Langley, there was like wind tunnels directly across the street here. And then just off the page, I can go to a different slide if you need me to, but the research drive, which goes into Langley Business Park, is like right up in this area.
So
And then this is Langley Speedway, if that's helpful too.
that is helpful.
Yeah, Langley Speedway's right here, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, the applicant is Michael Herbert. And yes, you will have an opportunity to speak. Thank you. Good evening and welcome.
Hey, good evening, Mayor Tuck.
Just please state your name for the record.
Ricky Elder. I'm actually the director of development for DeLorean Power.
Okay.
I do have Mike Herbert with me, and also a director of construction, Matt Raridan. We'll take questions at the end of the presentation.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yep. Look, council members, it's great to be able to be here this evening. We're quickly going to go through the following topics on the screen here, just to provide a quick overview of the company, the project, and ultimately give you some confidence in our ability to complete this in a safe, timely manner for the benefit of the citizens here in the city of Hampton. As you can see on this screen, this slide provides a quick overview of our company. DeLorean Power is a utility-scale energy storage development company that is a long-term owner-operator of battery storage projects. We currently have over 2,500 megawatts of projects in various portions of the country within the PJM, MISO, and ISO New England regions, so more specifically like the Mid-Atlantic regions into the Northeast and portions of the Midwest. As you can see from the graphical representation on the right, we have built a team that takes a holistic approach to storage development with the end goal of driving value for our utility partners. We won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but just wanted you to have context about who our financial partner is in these endeavors. It's Greenbacker Capital, a leading owner-operator of clean energy and energy storage assets in the U.S., and they have committed over $120 million to date for us to execute our business model. So basically, that allows us to be a trusted, creditworthy ally for our utility partners. In the next slide, this is just an overview of our senior leadership of our company. For context, so you can see, a bench of experience that we're able to draw from as we make decisions to deliver these types of clean energy investments in the utilities, in the localities we operate in. So transitioning to slide 6, we've prepared a high-level overview and some background on what is being voted on today, the update to the 3201 Commander Shepard Boulevard proffer agreement that will allow for battery storage projects to be developed at the former Praxair site. As you can see from the concept plan dated 4/26 of this year, DeLorean has plans to develop 2 separate battery storage projects at this site over time within the areas noted as Project Site 1 and Project Site 2. So the Project Site 1 footprint is a 29 megawatt, 116 megawatt hour battery energy storage system that already has an executed power purchase agreement with Dominion Energy Virginia. So it already has a contracted offtake structure with it. The second site is a future battery storage project site that we would like to develop at a later point in time. That is not tied to the specific site plan that we'll be going over here in just a minute that Donald just went over a second ago. And that's on this slide. So here you can just see that, let's swap the page here. That we're just going to provide a quick overview of the development plan that we've drafted for the project. A few points of consideration that are specific to this project. One, you just made note of the slide of the expected container heights being 10 foot or less, buffering widths of 20 feet in space, noise expectations being essentially none at the property line, and then fencing to address any view shed concerns. And it's worth noting, and you can probably see it here on the screen, that we have at least 100-foot setbacks from the property lines for any battery enclosures or groupings of containers, and that's a requirement that Dominion Energy Virginia expects of their projects with power purchase agreements. And it's also worth noting that we're working with the Dominion Energy Virginia team to evaluate battery technology vendors to utilize for the project. And our focus is to select a technology that meets Dominion's safety expectations and their requirements. So here on slide 8, this is just a quick picture of what a battery system will look like. Again, maybe a little bit of repeating from what Donald had showed earlier. This is just a smaller scale version of it, so you can kind of get a sense for what one looks like. And on the next slide are just components, what we call components in context. So we won't spend a lot of time here, but kind of what some of the main components of a battery system are and what they might be compared to that you already have a visual frame of reference for. My favorite on that is the communications equipment and how that relates to a London phone booth. Don't always see a London phone booth, but that's the one that you want to compare that to. On this slide, we did want to take a minute to highlight one of the most important topics that we have as a long-term owner-operator of a facility like this, and that's safety. So DeLorean Power, this is our top priority, to install battery energy storage systems with sufficient safety protocols and protections incorporated to ensure that these types of facilities can be operated in a safe and reliable manner for the localities in which we operate these types of projects. So a few key items to touch on this topic. Technology itself. You can see that we've selected a lithium iron phosphate chemistry to use for this project, and that's due to its high thermal stability and wide tolerance range of operating conditions. Safety by design, our projects will be designed to be compliant with NFPA, or National Fire Protection Association 855, which is the standard of installation of stationary energy storage systems. And you can see some of the associated requirements of NFPA 855 on this slide. What I would say in short is that it offers comprehensive fire protection criteria for us to utilize when we build, own, and operate these projects. So testing and certification, you can see all the different testing and certification processes we will subject these types of facilities to: UL 9540, UL 9540A, UL 1973, just to name a few. And then from an emergency preparedness perspective, we ultimately will be collaborating with our first responders to build and create an emergency operations plan and do on-site training and re-up that training as frequently as needed so that we make sure we position first responders in the best shape possible to respond to an event in the unlikely situation that one takes place. And then this lastly is worth noting that spatial separation bullet at the bottom. So Dominion Energy requires battery projects to be sited 25 feet, containers or groupings of containers up to 8 megawatt hours in energy density, 25 feet apart. And the real short answer to that is it significantly limits risk for fire contagion from one container to another container. So an isolation of a fire event in the unlikely situation where something like that is to take place. And then the last slide, we just wanted you to have some context, like this is not our first project. And we actually have another operational project already in service in the state of Virginia, a 10.5 megawatt, 24.6 megawatt hour system in the city of Danville with Danville Utilities. And, you know, we are the owner operator of that project. We placed that into service in October of last year. And it's been operating on the grid since then. And we're very excited to be able to partner with the city of Danville on that great project, bring value to their locality. And we're looking forward to be able to do the same thing here in the city of Hampton with this great investment opportunity. So thank you for your consideration with approving our application and deeming our project to be substantially in accord with Hampton's comprehensive plan known as the Hampton Community Plan 2006 as amended. So with that, that concludes my part of the presentation. Again, I have Mike, Herbert, and Matt Raridan. I'll invite them to come up and we'll take questions. We do that as a team together.
Councilman Hobbs?
Sir, have you ever had any kind of a serious accident at any one of your facilities?
No, we have not at this point. No, we have a zero OSHA rate, no safety incidents today.
My concern is I just want to make sure that, God forbid something happened, if something did happen, that our fire and EMS people are able to handle it, especially in the area it's located at. I mean, it's right across from NASA Langley, which is very important to this city.
Completely understood. One of the things, so a couple of things to think about on that. You know, NFPA 855 recommends first responders to be 100 feet or more back from a fire, you know, event at a battery energy storage facility, and to wear proper, you know, protective equipment that's ultimately needed to be used, like mask features and things like that, and to apply water externally to a container to put it out in the event something like that does happen. So,
and I don't know anything about these batteries, but are they dry batteries or wet batteries?
No, and maybe Matt, I don't know if you want to jump in. Matt's our director of construction, so he gets into all the guts of what we have to build.
Lucky him.
We do have, you know, these are, they're cells that are in modules, that are in racks. They're hermetically sealed. There is electrolyte within the cells, but they are hermetically sealed, so they cannot release electrolyte, if that makes sense, unless they're mechanically damaged. I don't know if I missed anything there.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions from council? We've got lots of folks. Councilwoman Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. I've seen your presentation. I'm on Planning Commission, so when you all had came before, thank you. I did have another question that I did not ask before. Is it environmental friendly?
We believe it is environmentally friendly. That obviously is a very subjective term. If you want to think about it in the context of, you know, providing firm generation on the power grid, there is no need to burn fossil fuel as it relates to providing firm capacity on the power grid. And then, you know, we do have a plan and process to essentially not take down all trees at that facility, and that ultimately to utilize just the land that's within the limits of disturbance that are noted on the. And I don't know, Mike, did you have something else you want to add on that?
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, the part of the objective of the project for Dominion is to comply with the Virginia Clean Economy Act. And so this is part of a mandate by the state to kind of transition to a clean energy power system. And battery storage is one of the enabling technologies to do that. So from a power generation and delivery perspective, it is a clean technology and will be emissions-free, effluent-free, and cleaner than fossil fuel alternatives.
Oh, thank you. I have one other question. How many people, if any, will be on site to manage this?
This will be remotely monitored.
Remotely monitored.
So it will not have somebody full-time on staff, but it will be remotely monitored 24/7. And we actually are headquartered here in the state of Virginia. So we have, workforce that can be deployed upon the event of an emergency situation, and we'll have local representation from our remote monitoring contracting staff to be able to be dispatched to the facility quickly in the unlikely event of a situation.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Bowman?
Thank you, Mayor. You got a chain link fence around this?
Correct.
How
Yes.
tall?
It'll be a 6-foot fence with 2 foot of barbed wire at the top of it.
Barbed wire. Okay. You kind of answered I was going to ask you about 24/7 security. So obviously you've got cameras to where you're monitoring this thing 24/7?
Yeah, Matt Reardon, Director of Construction. Yeah, so we use, the intent for this site anyways, use cameras that monitor different angles for approach as far as along the chain link fence. All the containers themselves also have intrusion detection systems, so if any door or anything is opened on a container or thing, the container is shut down. It notifies us remotely that it all happened, and it basically, has the system cease to operate.
So
if there's any
if I
intrusion.
open one with a crowbar, sensor would go off?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So, we'd take the physical security of the site as serious as we can for something that's going to be, not have 100% manpower present.
Last question. If one of these took a lightning strike, would it create any environmental impact, either air or land? Are there back to what Councilman Hobbs was saying, is there any potential for any environmental impact in a worst-case scenario?
So my understanding is no, based on the test. So the worst thing that can happen is a fire. I don't believe any fires have been caused due to lightning strikes on any of these. But in theory, I guess there's a possibility that you could cause a thermal runaway event, which Ricky addressed earlier. And that goes into the NFPA and the UL testing that happens. So if a cell was a rupture, then the propagation is minimal.
And I would just add to that, part of the engineering design is appropriate grounding to protect against something like that. So if it were to get struck by lightning, the electricity is sort of dispersed and pointed kind of into the ground where you have grounding wires on all of the containers and transformers and other electrical equipment. So those type of calculations are done during the engineering phase.
That's good. Well, thank you.
Before Councilwoman Mugler goes, did you get the names of everyone speaking so for our minutes?
I did not. I got Mr. Elders. The other two are
Matt Reardon, Director of Construction for DeLorean, and then Michael Herbert, one of the company co-founders.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Mugler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. It does bring a lot more clarity to the project and the intent of the project. You're headquartered in Virginia. Where in Virginia are you?
Arlington, Virginia.
Okay, great. And so I'm happy to see Hampton serving as a base camp, if you will, for green and clean energy. And so should the assumption be that Dominion is connected with this project with you all, and this is going to be a feeder to our capacity to provide energy? Is there a household number that's connected to this project, or like how many households this would serve?
Back of the envelope, I know that our 10.5 megawatt project is about 9,000 households. So multiply that by 3 and you're around 27,000 or so households that it could sustain clean power to for 4 hours or so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilman Brown.
Mayor, thank you. And thank you, gentlemen. I won't belabor your presentation, but I do have a couple of questions. Most of them have been already answered. So how are you regulated in terms of inspections? Do you have inspections at your facility? And what are the standards of quality standards?
Do you want to take that, Matt? I mean, I'd say for
Excuse me, sir, would you move over to the mic, please?
Sure, I'll go on the mic. So we will have to ultimately inspect the facilities at least, I think it's at least twice a year for like preventative maintenance, and then we'll be available to come in response to, an emergency situation as needed. But the idea is that, we are the long-term owner-operator of these projects. It is in our interest to always be aware of the current operating conditions of the property and ultimately to make sure that it's providing power safe and reliably for the benefit of the Dominion system customers in the city of Hampton. So we do have internal processes. I don't know if we have a regulatory requirement. I'm not aware of that. Are you?
Well, I mean, I think the primary inspections happen during the permitting process to ensure it is being designed and built in a safe and reliable way. And so we have a state level process in Virginia. It's the permit by rule process that we have to go through. There are the local processes for the building permit, electrical permit, land disturbance permits.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the materials that you have in the facility being inspected. I understand building permits and all the electrical permits. That's the part of the process of getting a permit. Yeah. But I'm talking about how you inspect it in terms of with the lithium batteries that are stored there to make sure that they're safe, they're secure, there's going to be a problem, won't have any explosions and the like. Do you inspect it yourself, or does some outside independent inspector comes in and help you guys with inspection? Because you said he said that we inspect.
Yeah, so there's at least 3 parties that always have an eye on the system remotely, and these things are kind of covered with sensors. Every battery cell in the entire container, and we've got about 50 containers, so thousands of battery cells. Every one of them has a sensor on it that's constantly monitoring the temperature and voltage of those cells. That data is collected on a 1-second basis and made available to both us and the provider of the battery project. So any deviations from normal conditions will be known from a remote operations center. We have a long-term services agreement with the provider of the battery product as well. They will be on site a minimum of twice a year, visually inspecting the system, checking the fans, checking the filters, replacing filters, making sure the electrical connections are not corroded, making sure there's no rust on the containers, and making sure the system is working the way it is supposed to. And that is in their interest. I mean, that's in everybody's interest, right? They are providing a system with a 20-year warranty, and they want to make sure that the thing is operating efficiently for 20 years. So there is both remote monitoring that's happening at a very granular level every second, and then there is very routine kind of physical visual inspections of the system as well to make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to.
And are these batteries, are they for sale? The batteries that are stored there, are they for sale, retail?
No.
Okay. And how are they disposed of if one were to be deficient?
They would be there. We typically have repair replacement programs with the provider of the system. So if a battery has some sort of defect, the battery will be taken away by the provider of it, recycled and then replaced by an operable component.
Mm-hmm. And my last question is, was there a neighborhood meeting held and regarding, your facility? How do your neighbors feel about, your business coming into the community? Was there a neighborhood meeting to kind of have a discussion about this? Because I know planning has some concerns. I think you may have addressed those, but what are the neighbors, business neighbors around the community? How do they feel about it?
About the business part?
Yeah, most of the neighbors that would be notified through our notification process was the tenants of the Langley Business Research Park. So just from recent interaction with them, I contacted them directly to let them know about this and to contact me. And so that generated a list of questions, which that was the questions and the answers to those questions were part of the memo that I that I addressed to City Council. So that pretty much took the place of an actual kind of normal community meeting that we would normally have.
Councilman Bowman?
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, so you all don't have any federal or state oversight at all?
In terms of the operation?
In terms of operations, inspecting, certifications, et cetera?
Like the NFPA 55 is a national fire code that we're following. The UL standards are national, international standards for how electrical systems have to be built, and we're adhering to those. As far as how the system operates, the pulling energy and discharging energy from the grid, we follow the PJM and Dominion rules in place as per our PPA. So does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I would maybe underscore the Dominion piece there, because they are the regulated utility, and we are selling 100% of the services of the system to Dominion. So when it comes to operating the system and even designing the system, they have we have a very close partnership with them to ensure that we are doing things up to their spec.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, this is a public hearing. There's no one signed up to speak. We're going to close the public hearing. Ask for motion on this item.
Thank you.
I guess if there's no motion, it fails. There's no action taken.
Can we check one more time to see if there is a motion? I thought that there was one emanating over here.
I asked, and no one said anything.
I motion that we approve the Dorian project as recommended by the Planning Commission, or their recommendation.
Second.
Excuse me. With 8 proffered conditions. We need to follow them.
Do I need to do it again?
Restate your motion, please.
Okay. I will make a motion that we approve the project with the 8 proffered conditions as recommended.
Second.
Councilman Bowman?
No.
Councilman Brown?
No.
Vice Mayor Gray?
Yes.
Councilwoman Harper?
Aye.
Councilman Hobbs?
No.
Councilwoman Mugler?
Aye.
Mayor Tuck?
Aye.
The motion carries with 8 proffered conditions.